Whereas once you get it a little bit more dense like this, you can actually get a polish, and that's what we're going to do today. I will say ahead of time for anyone that doesn't want to watch the process, the key to this is to use a lot of water. Welcome back to the channel, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to tackle a topic that I've been asked a lot, and I've just been too lazy to put it together, but we're finally getting there now. This Boulder Opal is distinctive because of all of these little intricate lines of opal going through basically a host rock of ironstone. You can see it here. This is the really loose, sandy ironstone. But once it gets to the opal stage, you get a nice little hard center in some of these nodules. Now, polishing this is not like polishing any other opal. So when you've got a normal opal, let's just grab a random bag. When you've got a normal opal, you've got this nice silica, hydrated silica crystal. It's not very porous, it's not very sandy. As long as it's got no inclusions, it's really easy to just polish up with your cerium oxide. You're good to go after going through your original pre-polishing grits. This one does not work out. Does not work out like that at all. People, if they use a polishing powder, typically get it all stuck and caught up in the face. So I'm going to show you how to avoid that. But I'll also quickly just mention there are multiple ways to do this. So in particular, if you're on a really low budget, I recommend sandpaper. You want to go sandpaper up to at least about 5,000 grit. It doesn't need to be the barrel. In fact, if you've got a flat stone like this, if you have a look here, this has just been flattened on a flat lap. Actually, it's just been split by the saw. Then you've got a bit of an issue once you've got this curved edge. You need to be able to use it correctly. And I've shown this in videos before, but you need to use it correctly to remain a flat surface. Whereas if you just get a flat piece of sandpaper, put it underwater, and then just grind your stone up against it in a figure eight or whatever, you'll get a much better result. So that's one option. If you go to about 5,000, you will end up getting to a pretty shiny state. Maybe not perfect, but pretty close. There's also the classic Nova points, or Nova wheels if you've got the cabbing wheels. So Nova points go all the way up to 50,000. Typically, when I'm doing my work, if you have a look at my little cheat sheet here, the 4-pack that you get goes from 280 up to 3,000. At 3,000, you are not going to get a polish on this. Don't be disappointed, you're not meant to get a polish at 3,000. This is just pre-polishing. This is a little bit shaping, but this is the pre-polish line. Here, you can see that we've also got 3 additional ones: tan, cream, light blue, or lieutenant blue. Now, by the time you get to that ending 50,000, you will end up with a fairly nice polished surface. It still won't be perfect. It'll be a little bit better than a 5,000 sandpaper, but if you can get sandpaper higher, you can match this 50,000 light blue. It's a really good burr for finishing off a lot of material. It's just not perfect for all material, and unfortunately opal, and Boulder Opal in particular, falls a little bit short. Another option you've got is this one right here, diamond paste. Most of you should be pretty familiar with it. Diamond paste is pretty good. It can get a perfect result. You just need to go up to a high enough grit. And you can get times where the diamond paste will get stuck in little holes like this, but it's fairly easy to get out if you've got an electric toothbrush or something like that. And remember, you'll have to use multiple grits of the diamond paste after you've finished whatever it was you were doing in the first place. Maybe just your electroplated plates or wheels or burrs. Maybe you've gone to a high sandpaper and you want a little bit of a better polish, or you're not happy with the Nova point, then you'll just need to run over it with one final diamond paste in the highest grit that you can possibly get. 100,000 is typically well and truly enough, if not overkill. Then the final option is your metal oxide. There's a lot of other ones. These are just the 2 that I sell. So the super cerium oxide, I do not recommend. This is the one application where I do not recommend it. When it comes to anything that's non-silica based, the cerium oxide does not have the chemical reaction that you want with the surface. So it doesn't have that chemical effect. It's just got that mechanical effect, that abrasion. And this abrasion is not very much. Cerium oxide is actually really soft. Ironstone is actually harder than it. So really the ironstone can put up a lot of resistance to the cerium oxide. It's not going to help you out too much. Whereas aluminium oxide has a much higher hardness. It's up there around the 9 on the Mohs scale. So with the aluminium oxide, you're still going to want to be careful about getting it caught into all these little pores. Now, if you've got a surface like this, it's not realistic to get a nice finish on it. You are going to end up with patches where one of these little sandy grains has gone flat and shined up. It can happen, but because of this unevenness and lots of porosity, you are just going to get dull patches and shiny spots, basically. You'll get speckles of shine. Whereas once you get it a little bit more dense like this, you can actually get a polish, and that's what we're going to do today. I will say ahead of time for anyone that doesn't want to watch the process, the key to this is to use a lot of water. The water will help prevent any kind of baking of the powder into the surface, into the pores. You'll get little puddles of water in there and that'll keep it nice and hydrated, and all of the bits will come out really easily. If you get anything at all stuck, same with the diamond paste, just get an electric toothbrush, an old electric toothbrush. Probably don't use your current one, but just get an electric toothbrush and just work it across the face of the stone. You won't scuff it up. The bristles are too soft for that, but you will get out a lot of the little bits out of the pores. It's mainly these major kind of holes that you get, because we're never going to get rid of all the pores or the holes. That's just unrealistic unless you're going to treat the stone and coat it with a resin, but a lot of the time you really don't need to. As long as it's dense enough, it will take a good shine. We'll test it out on this one and we'll see if there's any areas that won't shine up, maybe somewhere around here, maybe around here, anywhere there's that looser sand. But all of this dense stuff in here, we should get a nice polish. So let's spin up the Dremel and I'll show you how to get it done. Alright, here we are with my aluminium oxide. I have reused this container for so long now, I probably need to add to it a little bit. You can see the water level's a bit down. Basically it's just a teaspoon of aluminium oxide in about 250 mils or a cup of water. And typically I'll just use the Dremel to mix it up. You can use something else, but don't use wood. I found that wood can introduce something and then you can get some mold. And definitely don't leave anything in there. Try not to contaminate it with anything either. That's why it's got the twist top lid on it. You want to keep it nice and clean and nice and pure. So you can see here, just mixing it up, blend it up, looks a bit like milk. A little bit wider than the cerium oxide. And here I've just pre-soaked the stone. This is the most important stage. If you pre-soak the stone, you'll avoid a lot of trapping. You don't want any trapping and this avoids it completely. Now you can see here, just taking the burr after the mixing and just chucking it on the stone, you're getting this tiny amount of aluminium oxide, and that is just not gonna cut it. I just take it out, dip it in again just to show you. It's not great. This is not enough aluminium oxide to get enough action. It's okay when you're doing normal opal, but for boulder polishing you need a lot more of it. You can see that it's just really not doing much. So what you want to do is you want to kind of, instead of using the burr, just dip your finger in there, maybe get a little bit off the bottom as well, and just dab it on. You dab it on like that, get a nice amount on there. You don't want it to be too much, but you do want a really good solid amount, because you'll see now when I put the burr up against it, look at the color. You can see straight away its action is just taken off, and you're getting a lot of that brown off coloring is just that ironstone getting peeled up. And you can see we're getting rid of all the loose bits, but also starting to do the polishing action. So it's similar to what you'll see when you do diamond paste, except if your diamond paste is colored, you won't see it as easily. You can see here that we're getting right through it. Now just be careful and make sure you never let this dry out. You should never see dry powder sitting anywhere. So use a light and make sure everything's remaining wet. If it does dry out, just dip your finger in the water below and just dab it on. Just add a little bit of water. You can also just add a little bit of aluminium oxide solution. And you can see here, I'm dipping the burr into the water. This is what you want to do towards the end. I'm just doing it straight away just to show you guys. But do that towards the end. It'll start getting rid of a bit of the aluminium oxide, encouraging it to get out of the burr. I like to keep the burrs nice and clean by the end. And it'll just slowly decrease the amount that's on the surface, whilst also maintaining a little bit of moisture, otherwise you'll dry it out. You really don't want to dry it out. I encourage letting it get a little bit dry when you're doing cerium oxide on a normal opal. This is not the same case here. You want to make sure that you're starting to clean out the burr, and then you'll end up just eventually dunking the stone in the water, which I'll do in a minute. So you can't polish the stone that quickly. This is very exaggerated. But you want to start cleaning the stone, using the burr again. It doesn't matter if you just buff with felt, it won't do any damage. But this does help you clean out any last little bits of aluminium oxide sitting on the surface or in the burr. And it's nice to get it all clean, ready for the next usage. I also don't recommend dipping your burr into the aluminium oxide, which is why I'm using my finger. That can contaminate it with ironstone, and if you use that on something else, it's not going to be great. The burr itself as well, I typically have a burr that does aluminium oxide for boulder, and then aluminium oxide for normal opal, I have another burr. And you just put them in Ziploc bags and put a texture mark on them. Alright, so hopefully that explanation helped you. As you can see, so this stone isn't at its final stage because I want to take it back and hunt for some colour. I reckon there's some in there, but if we get the light to show us, you can see here how well a polish you can get. Now, if you notice all of these little marks here, and then I'll get rid of the glare, you can see that they're those light sandy patches. Now you can get a more even finish than this. However, what you want to do is be very flat. And this is something where a flat lap has a huge advantage over a Dremel. You can get the surface much flatter and even sandy, light sandy patches. So over here you can see where it transitions across to the light sandy. See what I mean? You can get little spots of shine, even on this kind of real loose stuff. If a grain stays stationary and you flatten a flat surface on the grain before it dislodges, you can actually get a polish on it. It's just not very consistent, and you can see here where there's heaps of this loose sand that you can literally scrape off. Look at that, you can scrape it off with your finger. So it's just this stuff that is pretty much impossible to finish. What you can do though is get it to a point like this and then just paint over with a very thin resin, and this will all polish up. It'll all polish up perfectly fine. I personally don't like doing it. I don't think it really adds much to the stone, and well, it definitely adds one thing, and that's resin. So I'm not a huge fan of something unnatural being added to a stone unless it's absolutely imperative. And because you can get a fairly nice finish. Though I do love aluminium oxide, I do think it gets the highest quality gloss. It is by far the most difficult one to get right and to be able to use. It takes quite a lot of effort to be able to make sure that nothing gets trapped. Like you can see here in this really sandy area, nowhere in this area, even though I attacked pretty hard with the aluminium oxide, there is zero trace of aluminium oxide anywhere. People say that they just fill all of these little pockets with aluminium oxide or cerium oxide when they use it. It's not true. You can actually use it and have absolutely no residue left. There's a couple little spots of color in here, actually little red flecks. So I want to try to peel this back down to here with the flat lap. I will mention that with the flat lap style of polishing, you can use a leather pad. A leather pad gets a much better, much flatter finish, yet still remains highly glossy like the felt. It just seems to get a better finish. I don't know what it is. I guess the material is tougher. It will also last a lot longer. These felt burrs, I mean, I used a fairly new one for this time, but these felt burrs, they do wear out really quickly when you're doing Boulder Opal, but it does get a pretty nice glossy coat. And from dead on like this, a stone looks pretty nice. It's only when you get that light dancing across it here where you can see that there's different areas with different levels of polish just because of the different materials. But like I said, you can actually reduce that a lot more than what I have here. I just wanted to give you guys a quick look, and I also wanted to keep some areas pretty rough to show that there's no aluminium oxide trapped in there. That's just the ironstone. So good luck. I think the other methods are much simpler. Diamond paste is actually a little bit tricky to get a nice even result, but sandpaper and the Nova points all the way up to 50,000, they get a very similar finish. Maybe not quite as shiny as this. I would still go over it at the end with aluminium oxide. And yeah, now you know how to do it without getting it baked in there or trapped in there. Just don't let it get dry. I don't know why you would, but don't apply powder dry directly to this and pre-wet the stone. That's one of the biggest tips. If you can fill a lot of these pores with little puddles of water before you even put any kind of aluminium oxide on there, you'll find that reduces by 50% alone, just doing that one simple step of pre-soaking your stone. So yeah, good luck, get some shiny boulder, and yeah, don't be overly disappointed if you couldn't get something like this to polish up. I'm hoping that there's a lot of people that have reached out and they're actually just trying to polish some like loose ironstone. That's not what this stuff is for. Though you can get a little bit of a polish, like I've shown over in this corner here. But trust me, this stuff, it's just going to grind off. Even if you do get it polished, like over here, if I just scrape my thumb over it for a while, you can see that you're already losing that polish because I'm taking some of those polished grains off the face. So you'll actually depolish it just simply by rubbing it against your thumb, or if I really cheat, using a thumbnail. And then look at that, you're starting to become powdery once again. Trial and error, you'll get the hang of it, just like my opal arrowheads. I mean, I'm going to fail a heap of times. If you find that you cake your entire face of your opal with your metal oxide powder, just maybe try to thin it out next time, or pre-wet your stone. Just try a few different things. Eventually you'll get it, and then once you've got it, you've got it. So good luck, and I'll see you in the next one.